Welcome to the Hidden History of the Southwest. In this episode, I want to talk about the history of the first Spanish governor of New Mexico, Don Juan de Onate. He is a controversial figure in the history of the American Southwest, and particularly the history of New Mexico. But who was Don Juan de Onate? He was born in 1550 in Zacatecas, New Spain, present-day Mexico. His father was a wealthy silver mine owner. Now that meant that his family was part of the Spanish colonial elite. He married Isabel de Tolosa Cortés de Moctezuma. She was about as close as one could get to being New World royalty as one can get, because she was descended from both Hernan Cortés and Aztec Emperor Moctezuma II. Now, we know he would have had, that's Onate, a very natural superiority complex, and it showed in his actions. As a soldier in 1598, he led an expedition from Mexico into what is now the U.S. Southwest, mainly New Mexico. It was during this expedition that he established San Juan de los Caballeros, the first Spanish capital in New Mexico, which was near President Acoma Pueblo. Now, the purpose of his expedition was to find wealth, spread Christianity, and claim land for Spain. Now, I actually have a historical fiction book out about an adventure that takes place in 1612 after Onate is out of office, called The Forgotten Expedition, A Search for God, Glory, and Gold, available on Spotify. Anyway, one of the primary goals that Spanish colonizers had was to convert as many of the native peoples as they met to Catholicism. Now, most histories use the phrase to convert to Christianity, and in the strictest sense that is true. The reality is that Spanish expeditions were accompanied by either a priest or a friar from either the Franciscans or Jesuit orders of the Catholic Church. Onate attempted to incorporate the native peoples into both the church and the Spanish cultural system, and often his chosen method of persuasion was the use of force. With the exception of founding what would become New Mexico's colonial capital, Onate's expedition suffered a lot of setbacks due to a lack of food, harsh desert conditions, and resistance from native groups, and he never did find gold. What he did find was, leave a stain on his history forever. Because one of the darkest episodes of his career, and the one that would eventually cause his downfall, is known as the Acoma Massacre of 1599. Now, this is an extremely important action that took place and had ramifications that have lasted even to the modern times, even to this day and age. So, who were the Acoma and what took place? Well, who were the Acoma? The Acoma Pueblo is an ancient Native American settlement in present-day western New Mexico, built atop a 367-foot mesa. It is known as the Sky City, and it had been continuously inhabited for centuries before the Spanish arrived. The Acoma were independent, highly defensive of their territory. Now, in late 1598, Onate sent a group of soldiers and missionaries to the Acoma to demand food and supplies. The Acoma resisted, fearing Spanish intentions and angry over past abuses. Now, the Spanish delegation to Acoma was led by Juan de Zaldivar, Onate's nephew. They entered the Pueblo to negotiate or demand resources. A confrontation turned violent. The Acoma killed 11 Spaniards, including Zaldivar. They reportedly threw the men off of the cliff. Upon hearing about the battle, Onate was enraged and ordered a punitive or revenge expedition led by Vicente de Zaldivar, Juan's brother. And in January of 1599, the Spanish launched a full-scale attack on Acoma. The fight lasted 3 days. The Spanish used cannons and firearms, which completely devastated the Acoma's traditional defenses. A significant number of Acoma were killed during the battle, and the Pueblo was set on fire, but the worst was still to come. About 500 of the Acoma were taken prisoner, and Onate ordered that they were to receive extreme punishment. Well, what does this mean? It's estimated that about 80 men who were 25 years old and above were sentenced to having one foot cut off. Now, even though primary sources from the day stated that was the punishment, some sources now claim it might have just been the toes, or that not all amputations were carried out. Now, that to me sounds like somebody trying to downplay what took place. It is absolutely true that people were maimed, people were harmed, and that women and children were enslaved for 20 years. The Spanish, especially Onate, wanted to send a message to the other pueblos, and that was submit to Spanish rule or face annihilation. It worked for a while. Many pueblos did submit, but over the next decades, resentment simmered, eventually leading to the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. Onate was eventually called upon to defend his actions, and in 1607, after years of complaints from settlers and clergy, he was recalled to Mexico City. In 1614, he was put on trial by Spanish authorities. He was charged with unjust wars and excessive cruelty, especially at Acoma, mismanagement, and abuse of power. He was found guilty, banished from New Mexico, and barred from further colonial leadership. Onate's legacy is a mixed one. He was a founder of Spanish presence in the Southwest. He opened a major overland route known as the Camino Real de Tierra Adentro between Mexico and New Mexico. He established some of the earliest European settlements in what is now the United States. He was a violent person who had no regard for the lives of the indigenous peoples. In recent times, statues of Onate in New Mexico and Texas have been the subject of protest, vandalism, and removal in recent years due to his legacy of colonial brutality. Don Juan de Oñate is one of those historical figures that many people would like to pretend never existed, but we know he did, and he left a very mixed legacy. It's a part of the history that we need to be able to talk about and understand that it happened. Then maybe we can move forward. It's all a part of the hidden history of the Southwest. Until next time, I'm Hank Wilson. Thanks for listening. And if you don't mind, please tell people about this program and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. Peace, y'all. I'll talk to you later.